Okay, so greetings everyone, and we're watching round 4 of the Crazy House League of 5 rounds. And we're just going to watch this match between mysonnevercallme, who's white, against Isachess. They're playing 2 games of 9+9. Um, and move that away. Mysonnevercallme will be white in game 1, and I'm just trying to catch up the action. E4, knight f6. Knight c3, knight c6. So black not pushing any pawns just yet, and then he goes for d5. So white is rejecting the exchange, so white is just looking for space rather than a sort of more closed position. And black is offering this knight on f6, which is a reasonable trade because this pawn structure is quite good protection for a castled king, and it allows very fast development of the dark squared bishop with tempo, because this pawn would be moved out the way. So it's a reasonable concept, and I'd say important here is for white to go d4 and get his own development going, and maybe have ideas at h6 at some point in the future. Queen e2 might also be an idea. So he played bishop b5. Reasonable. And just as I said that, Kia is whispering, saying bishop b5 was what I should have played. Oh, so we actually live. So he's thinking he should have played bishop b5 last move instead of taking here. But taking here is reasonable, but yeah, he could have held off and played bishop b5 directly. And he comments that he's a 1600 against an 1800. It's true, but ratings can be a little bit misleading. I'd say they are similar in strength, but maybe Isachess is a slight edge, and also slightly greater experience. But in terms of, so in classical chess, Kia is touching 1900, and in classical chess, Isachess is also touching 1900. So they're quite similar in chess ability as well. So yeah, it should be interesting. And I see we've got some more moves, and it's okay. I'm slightly lagging behind the action because this is good. At e4, so he's threatening to pick up the knight for a pawn and also wreck white's kingside. It's not clear how that could have been avoided earlier. Of course, queen e2 delays the immediate loss of the knight. But d4 is played. So if this takes back and we see, well, white will also have this sort of structure with 2 f-pawns. But the difference being is he will have a weakness on g2. So if I were black in this position, I would be contemplating how I could find pieces to exploit this weakness. At the moment, black has got no pieces in hand. And that's exactly what black did, is he's gone bishop b4, potentially picking up a knight. A knight might drop with check on g2 at some point in the future. So you could see something like takes, knight d2 check, knight g2 check, king back, maybe even pulling back to here with ideas of at g2 with a pawn if you can get hold of a pawn. But again, no obvious pawn on pre because that's pinned. So is there any nice way of getting this knight out of this pin? I'm not convinced there is. Queen e2, last move, this would still have come. If queen e2 now, castles will come. So, and this is a mistake. This is a straight up mistake. Bishop f4. And maybe I'll ask the viewers, can anyone in the chat see why this is a mistake? Let's see how the chat's doing. So we should be live on Lichess. And I think Isachess has seen why it's a mistake. So you see, yeah, Crazy House League commentary. My son never called me. So anyone in chat, can anyone in chat see it? And you'll feel free to give moves because I can assure you that neither player is watching the stream. And if they are, they would be severely reprimanded. So, well, there you go. Now you've seen why it's a mistake. He picks up the knight and then does this exchange, which checks the king and picks up that bishop on f4. So the bishop was a knight check away from g2, and knight at g2 was always a potential threat. So you could take this back, but bishop here, king here, knight here is checkmate, just to give you an example of a mating pattern. Bishop here is picking up the queen. No, it's not. Bishop covers. So bishop here, the king would have to run this way. He's picking up a free rook. So this is the kind of troubles that my son never called me, better known as Kia, just because it's short KIA, is getting himself into. Well, he's lost a clean. So both sides have sacrificed a piece for a pawn at this stage. But with this move, bishop f4, unfortunately, white's just lost a clean piece and also lost his ability to castle. But Crazy House is a very dynamic game, so still anything is possible. So let's see, does this work? No, because the queen would take. Obviously, bishop takes, pawn takes would be an entry. So at this point, if I'm black, we're a piece up, but we don't want to give back this piece unless we want to continue the attack in some way. It does raise a question, where did white go wrong specifically? Obviously bishop f4 was a mistake. Taking here might be considered a slight inaccuracy because black gets fast development and also gets that pawn for here, so he's winning the piece back. Trying to think, is there any way of avoiding queen e2, bishop here, pawn here? Maybe that would have been a way of avoiding losing the piece, because then when the king castles, you have pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn. So you'd have to reinforce this in some way. You buy a bit more time. And then the other thing I'm considering is, was there any way of just even sacrificing this queen with these sorts of ideas? Takes, takes. Again, it may be the case, and that's worth analysing after the game. But okay, this is something to watch out for. Nasty forks. Okay, so g2. Now, if black had a pawn, I think he'd just play this almost instantly, a pawn at h3. It's because he doesn't have a pawn that he's pondering what to do. And it's a good moment to think how to continue to press the advantage. And I think he played a move which I quite like. No, the bishop can't really easily be taken because if you take it, takes back, and we get the pawn. We potentially get a pawn on g2, unless we have something better. Takes, takes. Here. Could potentially go knight here. I'm trying to think what's the continuation. This bishop actually is doing an impressive job for white, keeping him in the game somewhat. So bishop at h3 is a very natural move, and the point of it is that you can't take it. But having said that, it's not completely clear what the finish is if you did take it. But almost automatic would be to defend. So if takes, what's the finish? So you obviously can't go here, because otherwise pawn drop here would pick up the rook and promote, and then that would surely be mating, or very close to mating. So you would go the other way. And maybe the queen might drop a check, and that might use up a blocker. You could drop a pawn here, or you could use the square for the knight. And I'm just, yeah, even if you do take, I can't quite see a knockout. Oh, hang on a second. Yeah, black had another knight in hand, so okay. Well, it's all a moot point. I think he did the more natural thing to do, which is to defend with the rook, but now the rook is in this sort of permanent pin, which is very hard to get rid of. The point being, if king here, bishop takes rook, knight takes. Can anyone in chat see how black would continue with forced mate? No, it's not forced mate actually. But it would be picking up the queen for a piece. So yeah, the point was if the king evades, there was, so just going back a moment, if the king had just evaded, you have bishop takes rook, knight takes, and then you have a couple of knights in hand, so you can go knight, or move this knight here, check, and if the king goes here, you have knight takes pawn check, picking up the queen, and the game will soon be over. And if the king goes this way, you just took a rook, and the rook here would be checkmate. So f2 is a sensitive square, so it's a wise decision from Kia to defend it. And it also stops extra pressure. So for example, knight drop here, just putting extra pressure on the pin. So white is not totally without hope. He has a knight and a bishop, so like rook here check doesn't immediately pick up the queen, he can block. It does use up another attacker. Yeah, so no obvious knockout. I mean, very solid move from Isachess. I mean, what I was expecting was more like actually giving up on this pin and dropping the pawn on h3 to try and draw the king out, and then dropping a knight. You have two knights now in hand, a knight here, and maybe just grabbing a pawn here and continuing, trying to get something going. This feels actually potentially even better. We keep the pin, and so we keep the pressure that white is under. And white's only defense is going to be try and... He doesn't want to give up bishops, but the problem is... So, when you want to defend this knight, probably a good idea is to defend it with knights, because knights are less vicious in making inroads on these light squares. So the problem with, well, he needs to do something to defend this pawn, but he's also going to need to defend this knight. Yeah, so the problem is this doesn't benefit him. You take, and he replaces the pawn here. So um, no easy answers. Maybe, yeah, maybe knight here was, yeah. So Isachess does the natural thing. But notice that he doesn't have a second pawn for f3, except he will very shortly after this move. So hi there, Aaron is a fox. Yeah, indeed. Saying I don't know who to cheer for. Both of them are friends from Lichess 4545. I'm cheering for Kia because he's my teammate, so I'm prejudiced in that way. He's also the underdog, but like I said, he's not as high and he's not. Oh, I think he's not maybe a 200-point underdog as the ratings would suggest. Now, there is a case in this kind of situation for trying to restrict material, but actually I can totally see if he did this, he's worried about just, I don't know. This is the most dangerous move, but this doesn't at all get rid of the this problem at all. I mean, by putting pieces on f. Okay, so this is actually quite an instructive point. By putting pieces on f3, okay, you're trading away the attacker, but in Crazy House, unlike in chess, trading away the attacker doesn't benefit you. What you need to do is to restrict the trade. So instead of putting the pawn on f3, one should put the pawn on e2. Generally, not always, but because the pawn on f3 can be taken and gives him another pawn in hand. So you could then put, say, a bishop here, for example, and then put the pawn here. So putting the pawn on f3 is giving black extra ammunition. So what happened was indeed that pawn was taken, and whoa, this just happened exactly as I was saying. So this game is going to be a story of light square infiltration by black. So going right to the beginning again, maybe we could see how it came about. So maybe slight inaccuracy taking here, because it gave black the pawn to pin that knight before white was ready to do anything about that. So maybe in retrospect, this d4 and bishop e2 were stronger, or not taking just so soon. If you're going to go bishop b5, So taking gave black that pawn, and so white also loses a piece for a pawn, but bishop f4 is the mistake, because when white loses a piece for a pawn, it creates a hole on g2. And this game is a story of the hole on g2, as well as this sort of extra material that was lost because the bishop's on f4. If it's on e3, no problem. Knight takes, pawn takes, and material is preserved. And white would still be slightly worse because of the weakness on g2, which have to be fixed. But here black has just this extra bit of material, which he is happy to. And then here, very difficult to defend this pin with black working away at these light squares. And just look how black makes progress into the light squares. Of course, if you back off, there's knight takes pawn. So takes, takes. And each of these exchanges, you have to ask yourself, is this exchange benefiting white or black? And the answer is it's benefiting black. It's just helping black get closer and closer to what he wants. There's even a case actually in this position of, yeah, it's not going to work, but of going bishop at d2, just so after bishop takes queen, bishop takes, you then finally get rid of your light square problems. Actually you don't, but you cover them a little bit. You don't because the pin remains. So a real problem, and of course pawn f3 lands on the board, as I was predicting some time back. and very little white can do, really. I mean, the threat is just pawn takes knight, king goes here, rook at h1 is checkmate, and if pawn takes knight, king goes here, the threat is something like promote even. The best white can do seems to be to skedaddle. But that is not very promising, to say the least. For example, king here could be met by okay, again, does this trade benefit white? Nope. Black makes these trades, and again, white's position improves a little bit. So now it's just black looking for mate. We could put a bishop here and cut the king off, cut the king's escape. That would be one idea. Doesn't look like the king is getting very far. Another idea would be simply knight here, check, and if you take it, knight here and pick up the queen. Black is in no danger, so this would be a very solid way of proceeding. Bishop here is the most obvious, because now the king is in has only got 2 squares, and a knight could cover one of them, and then the question is what can cover the last one, and the answer is a pawn. So I expect king h1, and then black will look for a pawn, and he has a pawn en prise. Very tasty looking pawn. And like I said, pawn here and rook here will be checkmate, so even queen takes pawn is reasonable. You might have fun, just go queen here and try and take as much as you can, but I think he needs a pawn, so queen takes pawn makes the most sense. But this game is, yeah, white has no counterplay. Notice this pawn on f6 means that even if white had a queen in hand, so after queen takes pawn, queen takes queen, even if white got a second go with the queen in hand, still I think he'd be struggling to find mate. Maybe there would be a mate with knight h3. So the thing about a castle king, you always have to watch out for this knight h6, queen g8 idea. Knight h6, if you go into the corner, queen g8 would be a smothered mate. Let's just imagine for a sec, queen takes pawn, queen takes queen, and white got to move a second time in a row. He'd go knight h6, so like I said, he has to take it or he gets smothered. Then you might be able to go queen at g7. That's just there may be this sort of idea. King takes, and then you're in. Except even then the bishops cover. So you'd have to go something like queen takes pawn, king takes, and another knight. Yeah, so even then I'm not even sure if there would be mate. If white played queen takes queen and black just played h6, I'm saying even then I'm not sure if white would have anything. But here, very nice observation by Isachess that all he needs is a pawn in order to deliver mate, and so he takes the pawn he needs. So this is a theme in Crazy House of piece hunting. He's hunting for the piece he needs. And the thing about this is if white defends in some way, as white should, there's going to be a trade of queens, which again is only going to benefit black's attack. So he defends again. Okay, maybe chat can guess. What's going to be black's move here? Oh, I didn't expect that. Okay, so there's a defender of the mate. What should black's move be? Chop off the defender. That was the move I was expecting him to play. Okay, he goes for queen takes, going for a trade of queens. That sort of slightly surprised me. Because the best move, of course, is just chop off the defender and there's nothing. Whereas now he has to work a bit harder to keep ploughing away. Chopping off the defender was very hard. to meet. So is he going to sack his queen? Oh, he's sacking his queen. Okay, so he's got to be confident here that he's got the mate, and he has got the mate. Because of takes, you can block, but take again, king here and rook here, checkmate. Should have taken the knight. Yes, that's what Deadman says. Yes. So, Kia still's thinking. Yeah, I mean, look, very patient play. And this whole game is how to play on a single color complex. Very patiently working away on a single color complex, and he's finally sacked his queen. He's bitten the bullet. That was quite a good defense. How come it did not end sooner? Takes here. So taking was actually a huge mistake because it got white mated. So actually defending, and he finally bites the bullet and gives up the queen, and gets a nice mate with the minor pieces. So good game from Isachess. As he said, well, he was recycling worse pieces for better pieces in that process, and also giving himself extra increment to discover mate. So what do we have here? d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6. Well, from last game I'd say be very wary of that pin. So maybe be a little bit shy and go bishop e7 this game, because if white ever gets a pawn, you're going to get into the whole mess that we got into last game. So psychologically, it's bishop e7 was a must in that position. Hi there, PKR. Cool. I'm in to listen to your commentary. Still, easy mate. Yeah, an easy mate in the end. You had black had so much material that for sure there had to be a mate, and even if there wasn't, the black king was very safe, even with the queen in hand, as I was saying. So we have a delayed wolf defense. So the wolf defense is what I used to call the Russian defense, where you play e6, d6 in some order, and you put your bishops on d7 and e7, and your knights on c6 on f6. It's a very solid structure, but slightly passive. You know how in chess they say don't block in your bishops with your pawns. So the wolf defense is an opening where you block in both your bishops. But at some point you break out when you're ready. Now, if I'm playing Isachess, I'm wary about him doing what he did to me last time with at h6 and playing on a single color complex. And already we see he's trying the same kind of stuff as last game, but the difference this game is that knight is not pinned. And so black is going to maintain control of the f6 square, one would hope. So even after the trade, takes, like pawn at f6 wouldn't work because we could give the knight back to take back control. PKR says, I've never played with a small pawn center in Crazy House. It scares me to give up that much space. But the best of the best do it. Well, I would say the best of the best sometimes do it. And so so it's known as the wolf defense because of the lone wolf. what I used to call it was the Russian defense, because I just noticed that every single Russian player I encountered always played this defense. Because it's a way to avoid all kinds of sacks on f7. Oh, so he's really had enough of that last game with this basically pawn on e4 last game, e5 this game, really giving him such a headache. And he is sufficiently traumatized by that by that experience that he's had enough. He's going to get rid of that pawn even if it costs him a piece, which is reasonable. Queen d5 is a nice move. There is a defense, so it's hitting the knight and it's hitting g2. But there's a simple way of defending both, which is either bringing this knight out to f3, or putting a new knight on f3, or even bringing this knight back. Now, of course, faced with these choices, you of course want to keep your active piece. So it's really a choice between bringing out the existing knight or putting on a new knight. And I would say bringing out the existing knight is not, in some sense, fully developed, although it is blocking off this diagonal on the king. But it feels maybe, yeah, I think it feels right to bring out this knight. But that's the choice, okay. And Isachess I don't think makes the best choice because he withdraws his knight, and the knight was his most active piece. So I think that's, okay, it's only a minor mistake, but it's just a slight error. So PKR says queen d5 can't be good because knight d to f3 developed. Correct, yes. So this was the correct response. Having said that, yeah, it does weaken also e7. Because now this becomes a genuine pin. Yeah, it is somewhat unsatisfactory, but also hard to say. And as Deadman says in the chat, now Black does have at g4 ideas. And after this, there would also be at g4 ideas. But of course, it's very easy to just chase back this queen. Just put a pawn here, for example. Hang on a second. So actually, yeah, if you'd moved this knight here, and then you did pawn at g4, I would do knight at e3 and then take this, and we're actually exploiting this pin if we take back, bishop takes bishop, these sorts of ideas. And PKR also says, yeah, chasing back the queen. So what in fact happens is knight e to f3 and at f5. Okay, so Kia is playing a much more solid game, which I think is a good idea after what happened last game. But unfortunately, this knight retreating move, which I thought was a retreating move, actually had sinister intentions, which is that by retreating this knight, he's actually made way for an even more powerful piece. And Kia has noticed this in the chat. Oh no, e5, that dreaded pawn is coming back. And Isachess actually has a choice of pleasant moves because he's pondering between e5 and h6. I think e5 is pretty nasty though. Can't see. Now, having said that, Black also has ideas of e4. So actually, this is not so bad. This queen d5 here. I guess this square is defended twice, kind of attacked twice, kind of defended twice, but you lose a bishop in the process. So yes. So this move is nice because it's got ideas of e4 coming. h6, takes. Okay, excellent. So white only has one knight in hand, which is important. Two knights would make this king in a very precarious position. So at least the pin here has been dissolved, and that's somewhat of a relief for black. But we're going to have problems on a single color complex, just like in the last game. So let's see if Kia can defend better in this game. So here, check. Stepping down is fine. So the key to undermining this color complex is undermining the base of the pawn chain. And it could be quite hard if at some point white played a4. And the whole structure is then very much cemented in place. The rook defends the pawn defends g5, and so on. That's going to be a hard structure to break down. And I feel it's going to have to be broken down regardless at this point, with moves such as at f6. If knight ever takes, you have these sorts of ideas. If this, then you have maybe at g3 ideas coming into f2. So we have a similar bind on the dark squares as last game, but I feel black has got a little bit more hope of breaking this bind. See, because he put the pawn in this position on h6 and not on f6, he's given, it means he doesn't have this square now for a knight. If he had gone pawn at f6, of course it'd be knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and then knight here taking the bishop, and I think that would have been stronger. The king could have ended up at the end of it on f6 with, yeah. So at h6 I think a slight mistake here. Takes, okay, he attacks the queen, queen goes back. A very good move because it's reinforcing f6. f6 is the entry square. g7 is also a danger if, yeah, g7, f6, potential rook at h8 are the kind of ideas. So white's got a lot of pieces, but he's having difficulty, he's having actually some difficulty holding this structure. And so I'm expecting him to play h4. And yeah, PKR is just, as I said, it was also saying what's wrong with h4, darkness, I wish h4 could be played here. The problem is g3. So one problem is g3, another problem, so f6 might be an idea at some stage, but h4, g3, if takes, white gets another pawn for an attack. That's dangerous. So maybe it's necessary to clear away this pawn somehow. For example, by somehow chasing away this knight. The danger is white's just going to pick up another pawn and just come in on g7. It's just really hard to... So this is going to be a tough structure to break down. So two ideas are try to undermine the knight and sack on g5, and the other idea, but then you give away a bishop, and a bishop's a great diagonal piece. So I'm not sure if that trade even benefits you. f6 is another idea. The problem is if takes, bishop takes, there's even rook takes, knight. At some point that knight is hanging out there, so that's a bit unsatisfactory. Maybe but I said maybe the best thing to do is just to counterattack, and just say, well, as long as I don't lose a rook, at g7 just move the rook across and just make sure f6 is well guarded from any knight checkmate. But yeah, this is going to be a difficult position to play for black for sure. Very uncomfortable. So knight to e5, says PKR, is quite interesting, opening up this diagonal on the knight indeed. So white's got a pawn and bishop in hand. So do you attack here? Here I feel he just would take it and get 2 pawns for the piece. Okay, so I think this might be making the same mistake as game 1, which is that if you want to defend a square, yeah, putting a piece on that square is actually a great way of defending a square, but it's not a great way of defending the square if that piece can then just straight away be taken. Because just think what happens if takes takes. Has black improved his position or not? I mean, it's terrible to say it, but another pawn is just landing straight back where it started. You retreat your bishop. If you retreat back to here, you've suddenly lost a tempo. So he's suddenly realized trade will give him a pawn again, and I forgot. Yes, this is the problem. F6 would be more logical, because then the rook would be joining in the bishop and the queen in guarding f6. It would create a slight weakness on f7, but there's no real danger of attacks on f7 for now. So yeah, at f6 is a mistake. If you want to protect a square, putting a piece on that square is great, unless that piece can be taken, in which case there'll be takes, takes, replace, and you're just losing a tempo. Now, maybe it's okay, because after takes, takes, replace, black does have this move. Although then white could put, say, a pawn on e5, blocking out that bishop, which then is no longer defending g7. And then the other reason why it might be okay is no. See, if he takes with the knight, hits, and moves the knight again, we're back in that position where we've just lost a tempo. But one thing he could do is to take with the knight and then replace and then just ignore. Takes, takes. That would be, and let the knight be taken on f6. And he's just noticed the bishop takes b2 at the end of the line. He does have bishop takes b2 at the end of the line, but that bishop will quite easily be kind of taken out of action is the problem. So here's the line. Takes, takes, replace, bishop takes b2, and oh yeah, white has not very much in hand. That has to be considered. So yeah, bishop takes b2 seems reasonable. So because white literally has nothing in hand. So yes, actually f6 is not as bad as it first seems. Although maybe f6 pushing was even stronger. I mean, the problem also... interesting move. The knight was always a bit misplaced on h5, to be honest. So just moving it out of the way seems fine. If takes, takes, we're bringing another attacker to f6, so that looks quite awkward. The thing about g4 is the threat is actually opening up the g file. So there are even ideas. Yeah, I'm not sure about this move though. Takes, takes. What if simply bishop takes? Takes, takes. Yeah, so takes, takes, and we really want a bishop here, so takes. At g7, avoid. Well, there's certainly a lot of options here. In the long term, this could be trouble, because you're opening up weaknesses on your king side. So Darkness says, G4 is my first instinct, but it looks dicey. This is the way to play Crazy House. I like it. Whereas PKR was like, whoa, I wouldn't have thought of that. And earlier, PKR says maybe just develop like knight D to C4. Knight D to C4. I mean, there are definitely other ideas. I mean, like even just takes, and at E5 is also an idea. And sack everything on F5 and keep on going. If the rook's ever coming here, maybe there are ideas of. I was thinking trying to pick up a rook, but that can easily be blocked. Anyway, G5 gets taken. It's reasonable. Yeah, so I'm not sure I like taking. For two reasons. You're opening up this diagonal on H7. And that's trouble. And the second reason is you're improving the position of the knight. So to take is a mistake. In fact, one of the real problems I think he has had this whole match is not making the trades that benefit him. So like this trade is not benefiting black. This trade is not benefiting black. So having a kind of sense of which trades are actually beneficial and which are not. So Deadman says, I just want that knight out of the way so I can move the bishop and get the queen. Oh, I see, yes. So Deadman wants to get this knight out of the way and have sort of ideas of takes and get a queen trade in, dump a pawn on G7 and end the game. Black was under pressure, says PKR, and his last couple of moves aren't helping. Well, this would be a nice move if we had this to follow it up and promote. But of course H2 is very well defended. So G2, maybe it temporarily blocks the G file or something, but yeah, not sure. So now, yeah, now White is under some severe pressure for sure. White is actually short of pieces though, one has to be aware of this. Black is under sustained attack, and his strategy has to be to restrict trades. And there are a lot of strong ideas in this position, so not immediately, but this is a dangerous idea. Followed by some kind of knight takes G5 idea. Doesn't quite work. At G3 instead of at G2, someone said. Yeah, exactly. You're diagonally away from the king. Okay. So like I said, I think White is somewhat lacking material to finish this off. Again, does that exchange benefit? Maybe he just didn't have a choice. But this feels like it's giving Black the opportunity to consolidate. No, actually the knight defends. Okay, but is there a way of finishing this off? So you don't want to lose a queen, because queen here will be checkmate. That's quite important. You could always block. And this doesn't work because the knight falls. This looks dangerous. Again, black can never actually lose that queen. This is the problem he has. Got this, maybe, and then this. And also just this falls. So not being able to lose the queen is or if he does lose the queen, he has to find mate. This is the problem. And with only one knight, that's not happening. So pawn takes bishop, knight takes queen, pawn takes pawn is really not anything. At d2, someone is saying. Oh, I don't see at d2. At d2, bishop takes d2. So I'm not following. Okay, the queen is getting chased around. Oh! Isachess just mismade. What? Why knight? Oh yeah. I see. But now queen here's checkmate. So this attacking move it was actually not only attacking the queen, it was also threatening this checkmate, which was missed. He came back to defend it, but he had to take with the knight, right? He had to take with the knight, lose the queen, and then try and defend this mate, and that's impossible. So yeah, well played by Isachess. So what went wrong for black? If we were just to peruse. So it's a fairly solid setup. Yeah, knight takes pawn. Pawn is creative. I mean, we were saying in the game, yeah, knight g4 probably looked best. Knight d5 was also an option. But knight g4 looks good because. So the idea is if you take, we actually have control on f6. So although at f6 is an idea for white, we can just take it. And we can see it's actually quite a strong idea for white. It's not in the opening database, but queen takes f6. Yeah, and white is actually slightly better in this position. So not an easy position to play. So how have we allowed this? Maybe this exchange is not beneficial. So just this straight away. So a lot of the times when Kia was taking, the trades are not beneficial. Why is it not beneficial? Because to take is just advancing this pawn further up the board. So this would only be useful if we had a use for that pawn. Like, otherwise, is it useful to exchange this pawn for this pawn? It's quite debatable. Could say it's opening up the d file and giving black a bit of space, but anyway. So queen d5, so knight at f3 is apparently the best of the moves we were considering. Knight d to f3 is the most natural, but the strongest, it turned out, was bishop takes. And why is that? Bishop takes h7. So if we were to take back, the idea is queen to h5. And again, the idea is if we go here, knight here is checkmate. Oof. So the natural thing to do is to block in some way. So pawn at h6, say, then pawn at g6. If we take, the queen comes in. So maybe we back off. And knight takes f7 is an issue. Okay, so crazy stuff. And if we try and think, oh, we'll be smart, we won't take it, then actually things get even worse. If you try and avoid it, knight here, takes, takes. Yeah, is that not right? Okay, so apparently takes is not correct. Apparently the correct move is knight here. Isn't that amazing? Because, again, king takes bishop is forced, but now queen h5 check is incredibly just mate. Because if you block, you're going queen takes pawn and at h7 mate, and if you take that darn queen, this knight on f7 is much better than knight on g6 because it covers all these dark squares. So you have at g6 and at h7 is checkmate. Look, there's no way. So bishop takes h7 is obviously sort of a Greek gift sacrifice you always have to watch out for. But it wasn't completely obvious. There's no knight coming to g5 in this position, so it wasn't so obvious that how powerful this is. So getting out of the way doesn't work, and blocking, it's just this at g6 idea. Blocking with the bishop is supposed to be maybe the best try. At g6, and then king to h8. Knight takes f7. If king here, pawn here will be mate, so we have to take it. And then he picks up the queen, so threatening mate on h7, and this game is over. It's not over immediately, it's just over very soon. So bishop at h7 is the best move. And this just so many pieces hanging. Just as an example, if we just try and take the queen, we have knight at g6 check, just to deflect the bishop, and queen here is checkmate. Okay, so wow, that was an idea. So that's why queen d5 is bad, as well as the fact that the queen can be hit with tempo, but that's a sort of quite deep idea. At h6 apparently is strong. At f5 to block this diagonal, because pawns have been exchanged. Okay, so queen d5, knight retreats, and I think here black is not doing too badly. At g4, for example, is an idea, and I was thinking just hit this queen somehow. I was thinking knight e3, but apparently that's not so great. But it seems to work. But so how do I try to? Where were we? g4. Okay, so what actually happened was at f5, and again, white. This was move was very strong. At e5, because the bishop on e7 is hanging. Isachess does this, which is also strong. At g7, takes, h5, moves the knight, and then at h6, and this is a big mistake. h6 is a beautiful square for a knight to cover g8. f6 is a much harder square. It's covered by the knight and bishop already. In future, it might be covered by the rook with f6 push. So at f6 is completely crushing. At h6 actually gives black a chance to defend. After here, queen d8, h4. And this is the point where, yes, f6 is a square that needs attention, but it needs attention. It doesn't need a piece to be placed on it, which will create more trades. We can't trade when we're under attack. We have to just try and restrict trades. So the move that Stockfish is suggesting, bishop f4. And I guess the idea is just go for this kind of... I was thinking the idea is go for a sack, but it could also be go for the knight. So let's see. If I were to just simply castle, what's your plan? Simply at g3. Okay, so at bishop f4 has sort of got double ideas. And if you were to do a crazy move like g3, then we're creating hopefully some weaknesses. Knight g4 hitting e3, maybe at f2 ideas. Knight takes e3, winning the queen, these sorts of ideas. Rook h2, e4. Okay, so basically you have this nasty structure and you just ignore it and say, as long as I defend f6, it's okay. So this move I thought just taking would be best, because takes, and pawn here, just to stop black picking up extra material. I was thinking that black, if maybe have to just retreat all the way to h8. Okay, apparently bishop e7 is also fine. But yeah, it looks, maybe it's not so clearly good for white. So g4 was played, and simply knight f4, restricting trades, is a good idea. So knight f4, if takes, simply takes back. We maintain position. Okay, it's true that white can get at g7, we just go rook g8, rook e8. As long as he doesn't get a rook, as long as he doesn't get a knight on f6, we can actually now start to consolidate and build our own attacks. I think black rushed a little bit into his own attack, so takes, knight takes, and I said this exchange didn't really benefit black, and this is rushing a little bit into an attack oneself before really one is ready. Like e5 apparently is good, hitting the knight. Okay, g7, rook g1, that pawn is just going to fall in the fullness of time. Rook e8, here, takes, queen takes, and bishop hitting the queen. f4 is good, hitting the queen again. And here, to be honest, I thought that was a great move. Because there's nothing here. White's completely crushing. White's safe, so there's nothing. Knight takes g5. Apparently, the other idea is bishop at d2, which is slightly more awkward, because if the king were to make the mistake of going here, this is checkmate. So this is actually a little bit awkward. And apparently white would have to give up the queen. It's just black apparently still doesn't have anything. But white would have to tread a bit more carefully. So if you just try and move the king, you're going to get mated by if you went, for example, king here, you just have, well, I was thinking queen here, and then knight here, smother, but also there's just pawn here and back rank mate. But the thing about this, you can just take everything. Check, takes, bishop covers any knight checks, there are no knights left. You can block any bishop checks. And again, white is completely winning. So you can't go for a counterattack easily, even though Stockfish is trying to recommend it. So this seems natural. Bishop here, queen f. Oh, I see. So this is check, of course. For a moment I was thinking he'd miss mate, but it was check, of course. So he comes back to defend the f6 square, because f6 is a mating attack. Knight here, check. And this is just mate. Queen takes f6. Knight takes f6 is just a little bit more resilient, but the problem is you lose your queen. It's just really hard to defend this square. If you try and defend with a knight, it just gets taken, and so on. And your only saving grace is this square becomes, I mean, empty for a while, but apparently just knight at g5, for example, covering this square, and then just take your time. Going for that mate, if he does something like knight f7, this knight takes knight is checkmate. Okay, so stuff like this. Very hard to defend, so he tried to defend like this. The problem is he's given away the queen, and the queen mates on h8. So, so probably the critical point is here, when black's position is quite uncomfortable, but it's important not to panic. And the critical moment for white, I'd say, is actually here, and this is a good lesson for future games. Dropping on h6 is taking away this is an unprotected square in black's position, so it's perfect for the knight to come in. At f6 is just pretty much, I mean, this is much more decisive. If bishop takes, you're getting another diagonal piece, and you're going to do the same as he did last game. If he takes with a knight, you have this, and it's just incredibly uncomfortable. You're losing a piece. Maybe he can go he can't even go at g7. His queen is hanging right now. It's a complete disaster, basically. So queen could go to d8, but apparently our bishop goes here, and you just slowly make progress on these at g7, but just knight here, hitting the queen. It's a knight takes h7, and then you're going to be hitting those dark squares all over again. So that's something white can learn from this game. Maybe what I'd say the two lessons, yeah, learn hitting on f6 for white, and the big lesson for black is to really think for each exchange, is that exchange benefiting me or him? So this exchange here, who benefits? Here is correct, that exchange benefits black. And then again with this move, who benefits from this exchange? And you could make a case for this, but white just has this pawn block here. G4. Yeah, f takes g4 again. I'd say who benefits from this exchange? F takes g4, knight takes, with this knight coming to a beautiful square, with this bishop opening. But if you just keep the pawn here, you're keeping the diagonal shut. If ever white takes, you take back. You maintain your position. So that's a big lesson for black. But yeah, both sides can learn lots of things from just this one game, and probably from the last one too. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed the stream. Oh, I've missed the Twitch chat for a bit. Squiggly Doodler. Instead of e takes f2, check at d2 was my idea during the game. But white was still fine. Yeah. Okay, so yes, we discussed that, yeah. At d2 after pawn takes bishop. Yes. So yeah, we discussed this with pawn takes bishop, knight takes queen, and I did bishop at d2. Bishop at d2 is better because it's a mate threat. So at d2 is okay as well, but then the king can maybe run like this, and the white's still fine. So bishop at d2 is a little bit more nasty, because then if the king tries to run, this is checkmate. So there's a trap there. Yeah, you get the queen, but the point is, and you've got a knight in hand, so it looks dangerous actually, but there isn't any entry square for the knight. This is covered. This is very well protected. Double covered, treble covered. So even though you're covered, it's not good enough. This check is covered. This check is covered. Yeah, so interesting games. Hope you've enjoyed. Thanks everyone for watching.